In July 2020, Sarah Walker called the police to report her daughter missing. Bernadette sent her mother a message revealing that she had been abused by her stepfather, Scott Walker. A few hours later, Scott drove Bernadette to her grandparents' house, but she never returned. Police soon uncovered evidence of a premeditated murder, a mother's betrayal, and a web of family lies. To this day, Bernadette's body has never been found. This is the story of a teenage girl who found the courage to speak up and paid with her life. Bernadette Walker lived in Century Square, Millfield, Peterborough, a city in eastern England, where rows of brick houses lined the streets. At 17, she was known to her friends and family as a creative teenager, expressing herself through photography and Gothic fashion. Those who knew her described her as a young woman with a lively personality. She was studying photography at Peterborough Regional College, capturing life through her lens with dreams of turning her passion into a career. Her photos were often shared on social media, showcasing her artistic eye and unique perspective on the world. Bernadette lived with her mother, Sarah Walker, her stepfather, Scott Walker, and her younger siblings in their home in Century Square. Scott had been a part of Bernadette's life since she was a child, publicly fulfilling the role of a father. They appeared to be a typical blended family. Sarah worked at an insurance company, while Scott held various jobs. The family wasn't wealthy, but they lived fairly comfortably. Their home was often filled with the noise of children. Bernadette was one of 9 siblings in this complex family structure. But beneath the surface of their seemingly normal family life, tension was building. Bernadette's relationship with her parents had become increasingly strained. She spent more time at her grandparents' house, seeking refuge from the growing pressure at home. Friends later revealed that Bernadette had started to change in the months leading up to her disappearance. She became quieter and more withdrawn. Her once lively presence on social media began to fade. These subtle changes, barely noticed at the time, would later become hauntingly significant. In July 2020, Bernadette made a decision that would set off a chain of events leading to her disappearance. She chose to break the silence about something heavy weighing on her mind, something that would shatter her family forever. Bernadette sent a message to her mother, Sarah, revealing that her stepfather, Scott Walker, had been sexually abusing her for years. According to court records, the abuse involved Scott Walker touching Bernadette inappropriately and taking photos of her. Sarah Walker's response to this revelation would later become crucial evidence in court. Instead of immediately protecting her daughter or contacting the authorities, Sarah confronted Scott about the allegations. She then arranged a family meeting to discuss Bernadette's claims. Court documents revealed that Sarah's messages to Bernadette during these critical hours were not focused on her daughter's safety, but on the potential consequences for the family. She texted Bernadette that her accusations would tear the family apart. These messages, later retrieved by the police, painted a picture of a mother more concerned with maintaining the family's stability than with protecting her daughter. In the hours following Bernadette's revelation, Scott and Sarah Walker exchanged numerous messages. Their communication became increasingly tense throughout the evening of July 16th and into the early hours of July 17th. Detective investigator Justine Jenkins testified that Scott Walker's phone records showed unusual activity during this time. He made several calls to unknown numbers, and the phone's location data indicated that he was moving around Peterborough in a way that he never explained. On the morning of July 17th, Scott Walker told Sarah that he would pick up Bernadette from her grandparents' house, where she was staying. He said they needed to resolve the issue. Phone records show that he left his home around 10:30 a.m. According to testimony, Bernadette expressed fear about being alone with Scott. She texted a friend that morning, saying she was worried about the confrontation ahead. This would be her final contact with anyone outside her family. The last confirmed sighting of Bernadette was when she got into Scott Walker's car outside her grandparents' house. She had only her phone and bank card with her. She was wearing her signature black outfit, and her pink hair was tied back. At 11 a.m. on July 17, 2020, Scott Walker's car left Bernadette's grandparents' house. The next 4 hours would become the focus of an intense police investigation. Mobile phone data tracked Scott Walker's movements that day. At 11:23 a.m., his phone connected to a tower near Gunthorpe, Peterborough. At 11:42 a.m., it switched signals to a tower in Dogthorpe. In the next hour, his phone moved through multiple locations around Peterborough, following a pattern that investigators later described as suspicious. At 12:54 p.m., Scott Walker called Sarah. This 4-minute conversation would later be scrutinized in court. Both Scott and Sarah claimed that Bernadette had run away from the car after an argument about her accusations. However, there was no CCTV footage, no witnesses, and no evidence to support this claim. From 1 to 2 p.m., Scott Walker's phone moved through rural areas outside of Peterborough. The prosecution later argued that these movements were consistent with the removal of evidence. Afterward, his phone disconnected for 91 minutes, a period he could not fully explain. At 3:35 p.m., Scott Walker returned home without Bernadette. When questioned by the police, he maintained that she had jumped out of the car in the Walton area of Peterborough. According to him, she simply walked away, leaving all her belongings except for her phone and bank card. Sarah Walker waited until July 18th, more than 24 hours after Bernadette allegedly left Scott's car, to report her daughter missing. This delay immediately raised red flags for investigators. In the missing persons report, Sarah described Bernadette as wearing black clothing and pink sneakers. She mentioned her daughter's distinctive pink hair, but something in her report made the officers feel uneasy. She spoke about Bernadette in the past tense. The police's initial response included standard procedures, checking hospitals, searching the Walton area where Scott claimed Bernadette had left the car, and trying to track her phone. But Bernadette's phone never connected to any network after 1 p.m. on July 17th. Her bank card was also never used. No CCTV cameras recorded her walking, and no witnesses came forward claiming to have seen a teenage girl with pink hair and black clothes. Bernadette Walker had vanished. The first 48 hours after a person goes missing are critical, but in Bernadette's case, 24 of those hours were lost before authorities were notified. The initial missing person investigation completely changed when investigators began analyzing the behavior of Scott and Sarah Walker after Bernadette's disappearance. Their actions gradually revealed their story piece by piece. In the days following July 17th, Scott and Sarah Walker sent messages to Bernadette's phone, made social media posts urging her to return home, and participated in searches. However, Detective Inspector Justine Jenkins noticed inconsistencies. The parents' phone records showed they had used Bernadette's social media accounts to create fake traces. September 10, 2020, marked a turning point. Scott Walker, 50, and Sarah Walker, 38, were arrested not for murder but for perverting the course of justice. Their phones contained incriminating evidence. The investigation revealed that on July 18th, the day Sarah reported Bernadette missing, Scott Walker's phone had moved to the area near Cowbit, Lincolnshire. The police then carried out extensive searches in this remote location, deploying expert teams and forensic specialists. Digital analysis revealed the truth behind the parents' cover-up. They had used Bernadette's social media accounts to message her friends, create fake messages suggesting she was still alive, accessed her Snapchat account to give the impression she was still online, and deliberately misled the police about their movements and sightings of their daughter. The police investigation expanded, adding more personnel, searching waterways, forests, and fields across Cambridgeshire and Lincolnshire. They reviewed hundreds of hours of CCTV footage, but no footage showed Bernadette after she got into Scott's car. A crucial piece of evidence emerged from Scott Walker's phone data on July 17th, showing he moved in the opposite direction of where he claimed Bernadette had run off. His explanation for the 91-minute phone outage that afternoon kept changing. Sarah Walker's involvement complicated the situation further. Despite serious allegations from her daughter against Scott, she continued to support his version of events. Bank records showed she withdrew large sums of money in the days following Bernadette's disappearance, money she could not explain. The investigation reached a crucial stage when officers discovered that Scott Walker had immediately turned off the phone's location service after his last call with Sarah on July 17th. When the phone was turned back on, It was in a completely different location. Detective Inspector Jenkins stated at a press conference that the evidence suggested a coordinated effort to conceal the truth about what had happened to Bernadette. Every digital trace contradicted Scott and Sarah Walker's story. In November 2020, prosecutors had enough evidence to charge Scott Walker with murder. Despite not having found Bernadette's body, Sarah Walker faced charges of perverting the course of justice. The trial began at Cambridge Crown Court in June 2021 and lasted for 7 weeks. Prosecutors presented the case against Scott and Sarah Walker. In the courtroom, evidence revealed the extent of their deception. Prosecutor Lisa Wilding Casey opened the case with a clear statement. Scott Walker had killed Bernadette to prevent her from pursuing sexual abuse allegations. The prosecution argued that Sarah Walker had assisted Scott in concealing the crime. Key evidence presented to the jury included mobile phone location data showing Scott Walker's movements on July 17th, messages between Scott and Sarah Walker coordinating their story, the use of Bernadette's social media accounts after she went missing, Sarah Walker withdrawing large sums of money, the couple's changing stories when questioned by police, and the prosecution emphasizing how Scott Walker's phone had been intentionally turned off for 91 minutes after his last call with Sarah. This was the time they believed he had killed Bernadette, when his phone was back online. It was in a remote area of Lincolnshire. Sarah Walker's role was closely scrutinized. Despite her daughter's allegations of sexual abuse against Scott, she chose to support him. The court heard how she helped create a fake trail on social media to suggest that Bernadette was still alive. After 48 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict on July 26, 2021. Scott Walker was found guilty of murder and perverting the course of justice. Sarah Walker was found guilty of perverting the course of justice. In sentencing, Judge Mrs. Justice McWan addressed Scott Walker directly. Your decision to kill Bernadette was cold and brutal. You showed no remorse. You deliberately killed her to stop her from pursuing sexual abuse allegations. You then enlisted the help of your mother to try to conceal her death. Scott Walker was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 32 years. He showed no emotion when the sentence was announced. Sarah Walker was sentenced to 6 years in prison for her role in the cover-up. The judge condemned her betrayal of her own daughter, saying, "You knew Scott Walker had killed your daughter, but instead of exposing him, you chose to help him cover up her murder." To this day, Scott Walker maintains his innocence. He has never revealed the location of Bernadette's body, denying her family the chance to lay her to rest. Detective Inspector Justine Jenkins spoke outside the court. Bernadette was a teenager with her whole life ahead of her. Scott Walker stole that life to save himself. Sarah Walker failed her daughter in the worst way possible. While we are pleased with today's verdict, our thoughts remain with Bernadette's siblings and extended family, who still do not know where she is. The sentences in this case raise important questions about justice. Will Scott Walker be eligible for parole in 2053? Could Sarah Walker be released after only a few years? Do these sentences reflect the seriousness of their crimes? Should release be contingent on revealing the location of the victim's body? If this case has affected you, please like and share this video to raise awareness about child abuse and missing persons cases. Subscribe to our channel for more in-depth reports on cases that deserve attention. 3 years have passed since Bernadette Walker went missing, and her body has still not been found. The place of her final rest is known only to Scott Walker. One man chose his freedom over the life of his daughter-in-law. The fields and waterways of Cambridgeshire and Lincolnshire still hold this secret. The police continue to receive and investigate new information, hoping that one clue will lead them to Bernadette. Her siblings are still waiting for the day they can say goodbye to her properly. This case has exposed critical gaps in child protection. Bernadette did what we encourage abuse victims to do. She spoke out. She trusted her mother with the truth, a trust that cost her everything. In the UK alone, many children live in families with abusers like Bernadette's. They face the impossible choice between silence and safety. When they find the courage to speak out, we must ensure they are heard and protected. Remember Bernadette Walker. Remember her pink hair, her love of photography, and her courage to speak out. Remember that somewhere, she is still waiting to be found. If this story has affected you, please share it to raise awareness. like to help others find it, and subscribe to hear about more cases that need attention. Leave a comment if you have information about missing persons in your area. Most importantly, if someone tells you they are being abused, believe them. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay alert, and stand together. If this story has impacted you, hit subscribe and join our community. Every share of this video could help someone in need. This is True Crime Storytime, exploring the darkest truths of humanity.